Picture this. It's 2:14 in the morning over the mid-Atlantic Ocean. A state-of-the-art Airbus A330 is falling through complete darkness at more than 10,000 feet per minute. In the final seconds, one of the pilots cries out that they're going to crash. But here's what makes this disaster so haunting. The aircraft isn't broken. The engines are running perfectly. The wings are intact. Everything is working exactly as designed. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some extreme turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call. Hello, and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I'm your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm not. I'm in fact Zach. They should just call me that. In fact, Zach. Everything is said in fact.
Well, guys, Zach and I had a little chitty chat today while I was walking Benji, and I think we're going to have a Patreon launched by the end of this year, but I would really love some feedback from people. Would you guys be interested in having Zach tell me a story every once in a while? That could be a cool thing on the Patreon.
Keep in mind, this is my voice.
I think it's sexy.
There's no up, no down, just my voice.
It's a great voice.
It's a face for radio.
Oh, stop it. So Zach could do that. If there are types of stories that maybe don't fit necessarily into our super standard Final Boarding Call format, that could be something that we do over on the Patreon. Anyway, it's just something that I'm excited about, but I would really love to hear in the comments, or feel free to email us if you have any ideas of something that you've seen on another Patreon where you're like, man, this was a really cool feature, or I like how they did that.
Really, we just don't know what we're doing. But
no, I've been a member of many a Patreon.
I actually have not, although I suppose that's because I bummed my Spotify account through you. You've been down a real way.
I love podcasts, though.
I have a hard time because I thoroughly enjoy the podcast now. I think you did this to me. It's your fault, for sure. I have a hard time with the subscriptions of the world. Everything you do is a subscription, and everything's just charging you monthly. Stuff is so expensive. We love just doing this podcast together.
We do. And I will say this. One, our Patreon will have one tier. You're either a member of our Patreon or you're not. We're not going to do some
fair.
There's 15 tiers and one you get this. And
you give us $47 a month.
You're just in or you're out. Two, it is going to cost about the same as a cup of coffee every month. That's it. That will be the entire price. It's going to be very affordable, and you will just be in the Patreon. Three, I know this for sure. Our first 100 patrons will get a gift shipped from us to them. I already ordered it. I ordered it a year ago, and we just haven't launched the Patreon. But
this goddamn event planner of my life.
I have really, really cool little gifts for our first 100 patrons. And I think I'm going to call it the frequent flyer, like something with frequent flyers.
Ugh. I hate a good theme.
No, it's good. It's really good. Okay. All right, you guys, this is way more talking than we usually do at the top, so I apologize, but let's jump into this episode. We've been busy.
We didn't get to chat much today.
No, clearly. Okay, this is a biggie, Zach. This is I think, pretty notorious case. It happened very recently, and the final verdict, there was a huge trial. The verdict just came out. So I knew that I had to fit. I literally had this thing half written a year ago. Finally was able to finish it, and I can't wait to tell it to you. Also, lots of French in this script. Zach,
we're going to need to pardon her French.
Zach took French in school. I did not. So the best you're going to get from me is like a garbage French accent. But I'm going to have Zach kind of help me out with some pronunciations here.
And I'll pretend I know.
So we have the final report for this incident. I'm not even going to attempt to say what it is, but just know it's France's version of the aviation accident investigation. This was published in July 2012. Mentour Pilot did a really good episode on this. And then there is a Mayday air disaster as well. All sources are in the show notes. All right, Zach. It's May 31st, 2009. Evening settles over Rio de Janeiro as passengers board Air France flight 447. This is
Paris.
That I can say. It's a routine overnight flight. It is really the type that we take home usually from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Exactly. You board after dinner. You know that you're going to fall asleep on the plane. Your neck's going to wake up super uncomfortable. And it's going to be the morning when you land. So this aircraft is an Airbus A330-200, and it's pretty new. It's only 4 years old. So the A330 is a long-haul flight. It's really not as flashy as the massive A380s, but with an excellent safety record.
Is it the workhorse? That's all I want to know.
Okay, I wrote that in my notes, but I'm not going to say it anymore. I'm just
Turns out
not
every
going to.
freaking plane ever made was the workhorse at one point.
So the thing is, I wrote a lot of these in batches a long time ago. I've started most of these episodes a year and a half ago. And I think I was just feeling that terminology when I just wrote 20 of them in 1 month. And now I have to go back and edit that out from all of my
Now you've said it so
scripts.
many times, you're like, what the hell?
I don't know what I was thinking. Wow, that's such a cool term. No, I'm over it. Nothing's a workhorse. We're all workhorses. Okay, this particular jet had right around 18,870 flying hours. And it was considered one of the most modern aircraft in Air France's fleet. Fancy. Probably had the touch screen on the back of the seats. Among the 216 passengers are people from 33 countries. That is really interesting. Get this, Zach. A Brazilian prince.
My boy?
A Brazilian prince, Pedro Luiz, is on this flight.
Incredible.
I know. Not a Nigerian prince who wants all your money. This is a legit Brazilian prince. And he is in seat 38K. I am
He's just sitting in the
floored
back like
that
a
he
normal
could
person.
not. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, what is going on where the Brazilian prince is not in first class? But I love a humble prince. That's my kind of prince. I'm a real Aladdin girl. Stay humble. 3 Irish doctors are also on this flight. It's like the setup of a bad joke. A student heading to Paris to visit friends, and in the cabin, traveling as a passenger, is Isabelle Bonin, a physics teacher whose husband is actually flying the plane.
Oh.
Yeah. In the cockpit, Captain Marc Dubois reviews the flight plan. At 58, with nearly 11,000 flying hours, he is considered a veteran. But this 11-hour journey requires 3 pilots because it's 11 hours.
Yeah, what's the max you're allowed to fly straight for? Probably 4?
I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I don't really want to Google it. So listeners, if you drop it in the comments. So one has to rest while the 2 other fly. So they're kind of doing a rotating musical chairs dance in the cockpit. First Officer David Robert, because it's France. It's spelled Robert, but we are in France. So it is First Officer David Robert is 37, and he has 6,547 hours, with 4,479 of them on the A330.
Nice.
So we're going to say he is qualified to fly this plane.
He's good to go.
He'd actually moved into a management role at Air France, but he still flew occasionally to keep his credentials current. I love that.
I accept that, yeah.
Then there's 32-year-old Pierre Cédric Bonin, the least experienced of the three, with just under 3,000 total flight hours, and only 807 of them are on the A330. His wife, Isabel, is the one that's in the cabin behind him. So, at 7:29 p.m. Rio time, flight 447 pushes back. The first few hours are completely routine. We have a normal takeoff, a smooth climb to 35,000 feet, and autopilot is engaged. But the route crosses the equator, which means flying through the intertropical convergence zone. So this is basically where the trade winds from the north and the trade winds from the south collide.
And become enemies.
They become enemies. So it forces air upward, and it does create a band of thunderstorms that circle the globe near the equator. These storms are very strange. They don't show up well on radar. They have less lightning than storms elsewhere. And for whatever reason, they are always there. They just are because of the winds. That's the reason. I answered my own question.
It's like the videos, like bear versus ear in the English language. It's like, well, you see, it's because it's not that.
It's not that, no.
And that's why.
That's why. Yeah, it's because of those winds. So every South America to Europe flight navigates through this weather, and it's so routine that typically pilots barely even think about it. It's just what's going to be there. But these storms contain something unusual. Ice crystals. And not the fun kind, like Elsa.
I don't think those were fun for everybody involved.
That's fair. So these are not the typical wing icing that you hear about. These are tiny crystals formed in towering thunderclouds that can temporarily block something that is quite important when you're flying: the tubes that measure the aircraft's airspeed. So, let me explain very quickly here how planes measure their speed, because we've talked about this on the podcast, but it has been a while. And if this is your first episode, hi, welcome. So aircraft use devices called pitot tubes. It's a small heated metal probe. These probes that stick out of the fuselage, and they look a bit like tiny gun barrels. You may notice them if you look outside of the window of your airplane. They measure air pressure by sensing how hard the air is pushing into them. So this is the analogy that I always use. Stick your hand out of the car window when you're on the interstate. You will feel more of the air, and your hand will want to go backwards, versus if you're driving 10 and you do the same thing, your hand's not going to move at all.
And do that so much that you become perfectly calibrated to tell exactly how fast you're driving.
Yes, do that, and then let me know how it goes. The computers compare the pressure from these tubes with the surrounding air pressure, and that tells them how fast the plane is moving. If ice blocks the tubes, the computers suddenly can't tell how fast the plane is going, and airspeed is a very critical piece of information for a pilot to have.
Yeah, I would say it matters.
It matters. By 2009, Air France and Airbus both knew that these particular Thales manufactured probes had a history of trouble. Starting in May 2008, there had been a series of incidents where these sensors briefly iced over at high altitude. The airline had been going back and forth with Airbus about it for months. What was causing it, and whether replacing the probes with newer ones would fix it.
Yeah.
That conversation matters, so put a pin in it. Here's the detail that stopped me cold when I was researching this episode. This specific aircraft was scheduled to have its probes replaced.
Oh, geez.
The first batch of new sensors had arrived at Air France only days earlier. This jet simply hadn't reached the front of the line yet. Around 2 a.m., about 3.5 hours in, Captain Dubois prepares to take his scheduled rest break. On long-haul flights, pilots rotate through a crew rest area behind the cockpit because you can't have somebody at the controls for 11 straight hours. You got to sleep. He mentioned that he hadn't slept well the night before. Then he heads back to rest, leaving the two first officers alone. So Robert, the more experienced of the two, takes the left seat as the pilot in command. He is now in charge.
All right.
Bonin, who is the one that has the wife that's a passenger, and he has less experience, he stays in the right seat as the pilot flying, though the autopilot is doing all the actual work right now. At this point, everything is normal. At 2:08, they warn the cabin crew about turbulence that's coming up ahead. 2 minutes later, the aircraft enters the weather. At first, it's just light turbulence. It's really nothing serious. Rain hits the windshield, then the sound changes, and we have ice crystals striking the fuselage. And that sound, if you've ever been in an airplane going through this, it sounds like hail on a tin roof. It is nothing that they haven't experienced dozens of times before. Then, at 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 5 seconds past the hour, everything changes. The autopilot disconnects with a warning chime. At the same moment, a gust banks the aircraft sharply to the right. And the airspeed indicators, the displays showing how fast they're flying, start showing impossible values, dropping from around 275 knots down to 60, and then jumping right back up.
Oh, wow.
These readings make no sense. This would be like if your speedometer says you're going 80 and then 15 and then 50, and you have not changed your input on the gas.
And I've totally had that before.
And it's very confusing. The ice crystals have temporarily blocked the pitot tubes. The flight computers are getting garbage data and they cannot tell what's real. When the computers can't trust the airspeed information, they're programmed to do one thing: autopilot off, control to pilots.
Yeah, you're actually here.
Yes.
Just you fly.
You are human. I rely on data because I'm autopilot.
And I have no data.
I have no data. Something else also happens at the same moment that's going to make everything far more dangerous. The flight control system shifts from what Airbus calls normal law to alternate law. So, let me explain what that means. In normal law, the usual mode, the A330's computers act like super attentive guardian angels. They literally won't let you make certain dangerous mistakes or inputs.
Makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Pull back too hard to climb and the computer pushes the nose back down to prevent a stall. Bank too steeply and it will automatically level the wings. So it's trying to keep you from doing dumb things in the plane. In alternate law, most of these protections vanish. The plane becomes more like a conventional aircraft. It does exactly what you tell it to do, even if there will be dangerous consequences to those actions. All guardrails are gone, and it is still perfectly flyable, but now you have to be much more careful because there is not a computer to save you. It's kind of like driving an old car versus driving a car with a computer where it'll like throw the car into limp mode, or it'll start pulling boost, or it'll start doing all kinds of things because it is trying to like save the car.
Heavily prefer old school.
Yeah, except I've blown up way too many engines, so maybe I need a car that'll start telling me to stop doing things. So this transition happens with just a brief message on the screen. In the chaos of the moment, autopilot dropping out, alarms sounding, airspeed going haywire, the plane is rolling. It is really easy to miss what that change actually means. So all of these things happened at the same time.
That is a crazy series of unfortunate events.
That's too much happening. So Bonin takes controls. Standard procedure. The pilot, already flying, continues to fly. As he corrects the roll, he also pulls back, raising the nose. The aircraft pitches up and starts climbing at right around 1,800 feet per minute. This is a steep climb for cruising altitude. So why did he pull back? We will never know for certain.
I'm guessing it just felt like he was diving down.
He may have been overcorrecting.
Yeah.
So maybe in the surprise of the moment, his hand tensed on the stick. It may have felt like it was diving. Whatever the reason, pulling back is what he shouldn't have done because we no longer have the guardian angels helping us fly this plane. And almost immediately, we have a stall warning sound.
So they didn't have enough airspeed anyway.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, they're just cruising.
Yeah.
They're
not
cruising.
Thrusting. They're not.
No.
But I fully understand the feeling
Yes.
of him wanting to pull up. Like, people think about driving cars in comparison when listening to these stories, but it is different. You're flying in the middle of the night, so it's like having your cruise control on at 85 miles per hour, whatever that transfers to. But in pitch black, you can't see anything. And then all of a sudden, your car starts going crazy, and you just grab the wheel and do something. You don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it was a very aggressive upward pitch. So we have the stall warning sound, which is a loud automated voice that says stall, stall, with a cricket-like clicking and the stick physically shaking in their hands, which we have.
Stick shaker.
We know about the stick shaker. Yes. So an aerodynamic stall has nothing to do with the engines stopping. That's a very common misconception. A stall is when the wings stop generating lift because of the angle it's cutting through the air. So wings work by forcing air to flow smoothly over their curved upper surface. The smooth flow creates lower pressure on the top. Yeah, on top than underneath. And that difference is lift. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, I think in this scenario, it's easier to just say that when picture the wings at being a 45-degree angle going upward, there's not enough air going over the top of it to keep it going. It's hitting a flat surface on the bottom.
Yeah. So if you pitch the nose too high, the angle between the wing and the oncoming air gets too steep, and the smooth flow breaks apart into turbulent chaos. The wing stops making lift, and the plane starts falling, even though the engines
Are thrusting as hard as they can.
Thrusting.
Yeah.
Correct. So the recovery is simple, but it's counterintuitive. You actually need to go down. Go down. You know, it's like when you're losing control of your car. Steer into the skid.
Turn right to go left. Mayday will show you.
It's true. You point the aircraft toward the ground, and this lets it speed up. The airflow smooths out again, and the wings can actually start doing what they need to do. You trade a little altitude for airspeed, and it feels wrong, but when your plane is in trouble, when you got to do what you got to do. It will feel weird to fall at the earth, but it's how you save your plane. Every pilot learns this very quickly in pilot school. This is probably lesson 2 after like how to turn on the airplane. So student pilots in tiny Cessnas practice stall recovery until it is muscle memory. Bonin himself had trained on gliders, where feeling the edge of a stall is the entire game.
Yeah.
But Bonin doesn't push forward. He keeps pulling back. Oh, here's a critical detail about how the A330 is built. Unlike a Boeing, where both pilots have control yokes in front of them that move together, the Airbus uses side sticks. So these are small controllers mounted on the outer wall beside each seat. It's kind of like a video game joystick.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And they are completely independent. If Bonin pulls back on his stick in the right seat, Robert's stick in the left seat does not move. So Robert can't see it or feel whatever Bonin's doing. There's only a small light on the panel. And in the chaos and darkness, who the hell is watching a light in this moment? So Robert has no physical way to know that Bonin is holding the stick back. He doesn't know what he's doing to make the plane do certain things.
Yeah.
But Bonin says he is descending, but he isn't. He is still pulling back. So this is really interesting because Robert actually warns him about his speed and tells him, we know this for a fact from the voice recorder. Yes, he tells him repeatedly to descend. 16 seconds in, they pass through 36,000 feet. 1,000 feet above their assigned altitude, and they are still climbing. The stall warning is blaring, violent buffeting, a rapid shaking from the turbulent airflow over the stalled wings, and it rattles the whole airframe. 30 seconds in, they have climbed to 37,000 feet. Robert hits the call button for the captain once, twice. Where is he? Probably, what the hell is happening in the bunk?
He got rolled so hard that he bonked his head.
Maybe. At just over a minute in, they reach their peak, 38,000 feet. The engines are screaming at full power. Bonin has shoved the throttles to maximum, thinking more thrust will fix it, but the airspeed has collapsed. The angle between the wing and the air, what pilots call the angle of attack, has reached 16 degrees. That is deep into stall territory. And the wings have stopped flying. And then physics takes over and the aircraft stops climbing.
And starts falling.
It starts falling. Captain Dubois stumbles into the cockpit. So he was jolted awake, I'm sure, from this moment. So you're already kind of out of it and very confused. He's in a cramped bunk, and then he immediately has to diagnose a complex emergency in the dark. The aircraft is now dropping at 10,000 feet per minute, which is very close to 115 miles an hour, and it is going straight down. Oh my gosh, I just want to take a moment because I am having so much anxiety thinking about the passengers on this flight. Oh gosh. I don't always get flight anxiety, but there are so many moments where I just have that moment from cases like this where you are just strapped in. There is nothing that you can do. Your fate is completely out of your hands. You have trusted it to a couple of people in the cockpit, and you just hope that they know what to do in an emergency situation.
That's exactly why I don't like flying.
Yeah. It's just it's insane. We're going straight down in this plane. The stall warnings are blaring Everything is shaking. He asks what is happening, and neither man can tell him. One of them says they've lost control of the aircraft and that they've tried everything. All three of these men are experienced pilots. They are not incompetent, and they are not panicking in the traditional sense. Their voices are stressed, but they are controlled. They're trying to solve the problem. They're just not correctly diagnosing what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And here the situation turns genuinely just devastating. The aircraft is now so deeply stalled, the nose so high, the angle of attack so extreme, that the flight computers decide the sensor data must be invalid. So the stall warning actually stops.
Because it's just so implausible
Correct.
to be at that point.
Correct. Yes. The stall warning is like, there's no fucking way that this is happening. Like, I'm broken. I'm broken. This creates a nightmare. When the pilots lower the nose slightly, the correct recovery for what is happening, the angle eases just enough that the computers accept the data again, and the stall warning comes back on.
Oh, and then they think that they are now going the wrong direction.
Correct. So now they think they are causing the stall by doing the corrective action. When they raise the nose, which is wrong, and it makes the stall worse, the angle gets so extreme again
But it shuts back off.
it shuts back off.
But then it doesn't work.
This is insane,
Okay.
right?
I could understand the predicament there.
This is insane. So from the pilot's seat, lowering the nose sets off the alarm, which is bad. But that is what they need to do in order to fix this situation. They fall through 30,000 feet, then 25,000 feet. The descent rate climbs to 15,000 feet per minute.
Oh my God.
Robert asks desperately what they should do. The captain, who never saw how this even started, can only say he doesn't know. They fall through 20,000 feet. More than 3 miles gone in barely over a minute. The aircraft is essentially a 230-ton stone dropping through the sky. And then Bonin says the thing that makes everyone suddenly understand. But I've had the stick back the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I can't even imagine that investigators listening to this. Oh my God. There is a moment of silence. In this entire situation, there is a moment of nothing. Then the captain shouts at him not to climb, but to go down. Robert finally grasps what's been happening, and he pushes his own stick forward for the first time in this entire emergency.
Mm-hmm.
The nose drops, the angle of attack eases, and the aircraft starts to accelerate. And for a few precious seconds, recovery is genuinely possible.
But they were too low.
They are at 4,000 feet.
And who knows where at in their journey they are, but 4,000 feet, there is, all over the world, there's terrain at 4,000 feet.
Well, they're over the ocean.
Oh, okay.
They're over the ocean. They have fallen 34,000 feet out of the sky. And if this moment had happened even
1
30
minute,
seconds before it did, this story would probably end very differently. The ground proximity system activates. So this is the warning that basically you are imminently going to hit the ground if something dramatic does not change.
Yeah.
It says sink rate pull up, and Bonin, hearing an urgent voice tell him to pull up,
Did.
he instinctively pulls up. Zach, you pulled up. At the same moment, a dual input warning sounds because both pilots are now moving their side sticks at once.
Mm-hmm.
On an Airbus, the computers average the two inputs together.
Which just means that you guys aren't doing anything.
Yep. So Robert is pushing forward to lower the nose, and Bonin is pulling all the way back, and it literally creates a zero.
Mm-hmm.
Both men end up pulling back. The nose rises to 16 degrees, but they are still falling. Their forward speed has dropped to 107 knots. Their vertical drop is also about 107 knots. So they are falling as fast as they are moving forward.
Well,
In the last seconds, Bonin presses his priority takeover button, locking out the other stick, and pulls fully back. And then, on the voice recorder, you hear him say, "Damn it, we're going to crash. This can't be true." At 2:14 a.m., 4 minutes and 23 seconds after the autopilot disconnected, Air France Flight 447 strikes the Atlantic. The impact is equivalent to being dropped from a 46-story building onto concrete. The airplane shatters instantly. There are no survivors.
because they had zero control from 4,000 feet.
Yeah. As this, oh my gosh, these passengers. Oh my gosh. This one is just, I don't know why, but there is something about like these nighttime over the ocean crazy ones like this in the Malaysia flight that I
Yeah.
told you that just haunt me. Ultimate anxiety.
Well, even if there's not a lot of them, I mean, every once in a while you're taking these long overnight
Yes,
trips.
I
so,
am. And
you
it
know.
is, I heavily medicate. As the sun rises over the Atlantic, no one knows Flight 447 lies in pieces on the ocean floor. Air traffic controllers notice it hasn't checked in at its scheduled reporting points. Radio silence over the ocean isn't unusual, so at first there's no alarm. By mid-morning, people are a little like, what's going on? And by afternoon, people know something.
Yeah,
Something has
something
happened.
bad happened.
3 hours after the crash, the flight is officially listed as missing. At Air France headquarters in Paris, families are notified. There's initial hope. Maybe a communications failure, maybe the plane diverted somewhere. But as the hours pass with no contact from this plane, a terrible certainty sets in. On June 2nd, Brazilian Air Force pilots spot floating debris, a seat, white panels, electrical parts. It's clearly from Flight 447. Within days, 50 bodies are recovered, including Captain Dubois, identified through fingerprints and dental records. But 178 victims remain lost in the depths, along with any answers about what happened. Search vessels rush in with underwater microphones, listening for the pings from the flight recorder's locator beacons. So these bright orange, what we call black boxes, send out an underwater signal for about 30 days before their batteries die. So I don't think I've ever mentioned that before.
Yeah, I
that
didn't
there's
know
only
the
30
timeline.
days. Yeah, you got 30 days, and then it's just gone. But despite days of searching, nothing is found. Ocean currents have scattered the floating debris across a huge area, making it nearly impossible to pin down where the plane actually
Ended
hit.
up. Yeah.
And the water here is really deep. I mean, we are in the middle of the ocean. It is 15,000 feet deep. For the families, this begins a nightmare of uncertainty. Without answers, there is very little closure. Theories multiply. At this point, if you put yourself in the shoes of a family member, you are probably thinking terrorism. You are thinking...
Yeah, for a reason of crash.
Yeah. Was there a lightning strike? Did a frickin' engine multiple engines
bird
fall
strikes.
off. Like, what happened? And if you are any sort of an investigation or airline safety agency, you are thinking, wow, really hope this isn't something that could happen to another plane. But you have no answers. Searches continue through the rest of 2009 and into 2010.
Wow.
The seafloor here is like a submerged mountain range, ridges, valleys, and literally underwater cliffs. As months stretch towards 2 years, hope of finding the main wreckage fails, despite robotic submarines methodically scanning enormous areas with sonar. They're pulling out some pretty big guns, finding nothing. Then, in March 2011, a fourth search begins with the most advanced technology available, guided by probability mapping, analyzing currents, the drift of the recovered debris, and the aircraft's last known position to narrow down the most likely crash site. And on April 2nd, 2011, we are nearly 2 years after the crash. The breakthrough finally comes. The main wreckage is found on a relatively flat stretch of seafloor at a depth of about 12,800 feet. Remotely operated robots descend with cameras and mechanical arms. They send back haunting images. The tail fin with the Air France logo is still visible. Landing gear, sections of fuselage, and, of course, bodies that are still trapped inside. Over the following months, 104 more victims are recovered, which is really unbelievable if you think about it. However, there are 74 that would never be found or have not been found to
That probably just ended up outside of the
Yeah.
main part of the wreckage, and then currents swept them away.
It's the ocean.
Yeah.
It's the ocean.
The ocean beats all things. That's why it's not in rock, paper, scissors.
It's so true. It's actually, Zach's, I would say it's your biggest fear. It's the one thing that you really are like,
Ocean's
not.
sketchy. We don't know enough about the ocean for me to trust it.
Yeah. Yeah. When we went free diving with sharks, that was like a big thing for you. I'm really proud that you did that. But yeah, he was like, okay, did it. On May 1st, one of the robots locates the flight data recorder. The next day, the cockpit voice recorder. Both are brought carefully to the surface and flown to Paris. I apologize, guys. The old dog, my old boy, was having a little panic attack in the bedroom, so we had to let him out. So you'll hear him doing his awkward tippy-tappies. Remarkably, after nearly 2 years under crushing pressure, these things are intact.
How could they not be?
I mean,
It's just the most incredible protection ever.
it's unbelievable. And the data is clean, as well as the recordings, which is why I'm able to tell you this story today, because without it, we would just be like, no clue, no idea. After 2 years of speculation, well, it would be a lot like the Malaysia episode I told you, where all I could do was just tell you the flight path, basically. So after 2 years of speculation, investigators are finally about to learn what happened in these final minutes. And what they find is far more disturbing than anyone imagined. So when the BEA downloads the recordings, they find both captured everything, right up to impact, every word, every alarm, every control input, every system change. And what they reveal is devastating, but not in the way that anyone expected. The aircraft had been functioning completely normally. So the pitot tubes had iced over, but only temporarily. They cleared within a minute.
Yeah, it was just a moment of unsurety by the plane. So it said, hey, autopilot, take over.
Yep.
But They never had to pull back. They never had to do any of it.
Nope. The ice melted and they had started working again. And this is really what shocked investigators most. They run the scenario through high fidelity simulators to see what would have happened if the pilots had simply done nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean literally letting go of the controls.
Yeah, and just leaving the thrust or throttle wherever it was.
Correct. Like autopilot disengages and all you do is put your hands up in the air. And the answer is that the aircraft would have stayed stable at cruise altitude.
Yeah, and it would have thawed again, and then it would have just kept going normal.
Yes. The A330 is inherently stable. It wants to fly straight and stable. The plane would have been completely fine if nobody had been in that cockpit.
Yeah.
The plane would have been fine. Instead, the nose-up inputs drove it into a climb until it slowed and it stalled. And then for the next 3.5 minutes, the stick stayed back, holding the aircraft in a stall all the way down. The stall warning had sounded continuously for 54 seconds. The buffeting had been unmistakable, yet none of the 3 pilots ever correctly diagnosed the stall. So the investigators ask a fairly obvious question. How?
One of them was sleeping. Okay.
How could 3 experienced pilots with more than 20,000 combined hours fail to recognize and recover from a basic stall? The BEA found training gaps the whole industry had missed. So Bonin had never practiced recovering from a stall at high altitude in a simulator.
Well.
So him doing it in real life with
never training
real humans,
yeah,
that was the first time that he had done that. Air France's training program, which met all of the regulatory requirements of the time, didn't include manual recovery from a fully developed stall at cruise altitude. So these pilots had trained for engine failures, fires, hydraulic, electrical problems, but not extensively for one of the most fundamental emergencies in flight, recognizing and recovering a high-altitude stall. The assumption across the industry was that in an aircraft this automated, this protected, this high-tech, a stall was so unlikely that you didn't even need to train for it.
Wow.
The computers won't let you stall, right? That was the idea behind this plane. So why spend simulator time on it? Well, this is why. This is why you spend time on it. The pilots also had little recent practice hand flying at altitude. So in a modern airliner, the autopilot does. We're just going to let my blind and deaf senior dog waddle his way back to the room. Okay. And then he's going to come right back. In a modern airliner, the autopilot does nearly all of the flying. Pilots hand fly for maybe 15 or 20 minutes per flight, and that is takeoff and landing.
Yep.
The rest of the time, they are monitoring the systems. They are not moving the controls. For Bonin, with only 807 hours on the A330, most of that time was spent watching the autopilot. There was also the confusion over how the stall warning behaved, sounding when they lowered the nose, going quiet when they raised it.
Yeah.
So the BEA found the pilots were never taught the system worked that way at extreme angles. So they did not know that they needed to tune that out.
I would argue that it shouldn't work that way. The fact that the alarm turns off when you're too far out of angle, when it's an out of angle sensor, that's kind of ridiculous.
It's problematic. So then, this is kind of the cherry on top of this really gross ice cream sundae. There's what investigators called the startle effect. The autopilot quit suddenly, at night, in turbulence, in a remote place with one pilot tired and the other relatively inexperienced.
Boom. Exactly what I said.
It's a cascade of warnings. They all hit at once. They created an overwhelming wall of information. And
he just grabbed something.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Zach. He panicked.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, you panicked.
He panicked and took a shot.
Yep. Research shows that when people are startled, they fall back on their most deeply drilled responses.
Pull up.
For Bonin, the ingrained response to an emergency was to add full power and pull up to a climb. In normal law, that works because the computers won't let the plane stall. However, we were in alternate law, which they also
Swiss cheese.
didn't know about.
It was multiple things went bad at one time.
Crew coordination broke down entirely, right? It was like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, they didn't even talk to each other. They were just...
No. Robert couldn't see or feel Bonin's side stick, so he had no idea that Bonin was actually holding it back. Bonin never clearly said, hey, I'm pulling all the way back, until they were 4,000 feet above the ocean. Captain Dubois, really, it's hard to fault him because he was asleep, but he arrived very late into this emergency and then had to figure out what the hell was going on. And critically, no one stepped back to ask the most basic question: what is the aircraft actually doing? What do the primary instruments, attitude and vertical speed, actually tell us?
Did you say attitude?
Attitude.
That's a gauge, is attitude?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What does that gauge do?
So flight attitude refers to an aircraft's orientation in three-dimensional space.
Oh, so it's
relative
like
to the Earth's
360
horizon.
all the way around
Exactly. It includes pitch, which is nose up down, roll or bank, which is wings left right, and yaw, which is nose left right.
Okay.
Yep. And now the BEA also dug into the Pitot probe history. And this is where they figured out that there's this whole history of these things icing over up in this area. Air France's A330 and A340 fleet had experienced, buckle up, Zach, 9 incidents of unreliable airspeed at high altitude between May 2008 and March 2009. Less than 1 year and 9 documented incidents.
Wow.
The airline reported them to Airbus and pushed repeatedly for a cause and a fix. But the story wasn't a simple case of Airbus recommending a better part while Air France dragged its feet. The newer probe on the table had originally been designed to fix a completely different problem: water getting in during heavy rain. Pineapple. Water getting in during heavy rain, not ice crystals. So they have a new design, but it's for a completely different issue. As late as October 2008, Airbus told Air France that newer probe was unlikely to help in an ice crystal environment. They essentially were like, go kick rocks. It wasn't until April 2009 that Airbus reported it might actually perform meaningfully better in that environment. Once Air France heard that, it was like, thank goodness. And it moved to get a whole new batch of sensors for its fleet. So Air France was like, yes, if this will fix this known issue, we're on board. The new sensors did arrive on May 26, 2009. That was 6 days before the crash. The first aircraft was modified on May 30th. Flight 447 was still fitted with the original probes. So the picture the BEA paints isn't a villain sitting on a known fix. It's something far more unsettling. It's a known problem that everyone was actively working, but that no one treated as urgent enough. The safety of the entire system rested on one assumption, and on this night, it did not hold. In its final report, published in July of 2012, the BEA concluded that while the icing started the sequence, the accident came down to the crew's inappropriate control inputs in response to a situation the aircraft systems were actually handling responsibly.
I concur.
Mm-hmm. So, for the families of the 228 victims, the 2012 report answered what happened, but it didn't answer who was responsible. So if the crash came from faulty equipment both companies knew about, inadequate training that the industry at large had signed off on, and pilot errors made under extreme stress, then who should answer for it? The pilots died in the crash, so they couldn't be tried. So the families turned to the next available targets, Air France and Airbus. French prosecutors brought charges of corporate manslaughter against both companies. This is an extraordinary step against two of France's most prominent firms. And the case moved very slowly. It took until 2022, 13 years after the crash, for the first trial to even begin. In April 2023, the court acquitted both companies. The judges accepted that errors had been made, but ruled that prosecutors hadn't proven a certain causal link between those errors and the crash, because the pilot's actions were very clearly a major component of this incident. For the families, it felt like a technicality standing in the way of accountability. Prosecutors appealed, and under French law, that meant a full retrial. Every piece of evidence was going to be examined again by new judges. That appeal ran through the fall of 2025, and during it came a striking admission. You ready? This is the game changer. Air France's own lawyer acknowledged in court that the airline had the means to give its crews high-altitude, unreliable airspeed training and chose not to.
Oh, he messed up.
Because it believed the training was unnecessary. I mean, I'm sure he was under oath. On May 21st, 2026, I'm telling you, this just came out. This is the juicy new goss. Nearly 17 years after the crash, the Paris Court of Appeal reached its verdict. Guilty. Guilty. Both Air France and Airbus were found criminally responsible for the crash, the court calling them, in its own words, solely and entirely responsible. The penalty tells you everything about why this case was never really about money. The maximum fine for corporate manslaughter in France is only about $261,000 for each company.
Oh.
It is
not good.
It's friggin', that's pocket change. That's literally petty cash. For firms with revenues in the billions, that's a rounding error, and it's true. That is just like, no. What the families wanted wasn't a check. It was the justice system saying on the record that these deaths were preventable and that someone bore responsibility. One of the victims' association leaders, Danielle Lamy, who lost her son, said the court had at last taken account of their family's pain. So Airbus did announce that it would appeal to France's highest court. So they're basically taking it to what the U.S. has, the Supreme Court. They have in France, it is the Court of Cassation, something like that. Though that court reviews only whether the law was applied correctly, not the facts of the crash. So take that for what it is. Flight 447 has already reshaped aviation. So let me tell you what happened from this. First, pilots worldwide now train specifically for high altitude stall recognition and recovery, and for startle and surprise scenarios. Blah!
You got a guy that jumps out and says peekaboo.
The problematic probes were banned from long-range aircraft. So these new aircraft carry angle of attack indicators as standard, giving pilots a direct read on when they're nearing a stall. Every one of those changes came too late for the people aboard Flight 447. But it hopefully will make flying safer for other people that are crossing oceans late at night. Zach, that's our story for today.
Well, it's always unfortunate when there's a lot of innocent folks that lose their lives.
I know.
As every other time. It's one of those things that we hope we just learn from and that it never has to happen again.
This one's so scary. Oof. Well, if you thought we did a good job telling this story, please rate, review, tell a friend. We've got a website, finalboardingcallpodcast.com, and I almost gave the email address, which we also have. But on the website, I've got an area where you can drop in episode recommendations. We've got our merch on there. Go ahead and let us know. And then join us next time when we'll be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination. Goodbye, friends.